are you?
Well, all right. I had some issues with this computer, so.
Okay.
You're in Florida and you have a sweater on? What the hell?
Dude, it's 56 degrees right now. We've had freeze and frost warnings at night. I slept through a tornado warning the other morning.
Well, it's
Yeah,
14 here, so.
I know, but the thing that blows is I wanted to sit inside. I'd have stayed home. You know,
Yeah,
um,
well, yeah.
I prefer to sit outside, but I've gotten tired of like at night, 35, 40 degrees. So,
Yeah. No,
um,
I get it.
it's going to be warmer today and tomorrow, but then it's going to dip down into the like 30 for a low and 50 for a high this weekend.
Where are you around Orlando? Is that where you are?
I'm actually at Fort Wilderness right now at Disney World. And the parks are full, even though everybody's wearing jackets. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for doing this. I'm as many classes as I've done online in front of large groups. I'm nervous as hell about this. So,
oh, you are.
This is, yeah. I mean, I'm certainly not Jimmy Kimmel or Johnny Carson or anything, but they had to start someplace too.
Yeah.
So
well, I'm the one that's in the hot seat.
Nah, this is gonna be sweet. I'm not gonna ask you anything that could get you in trouble at work. So,
Good.
or at home. Good Lord, not
that.
at home. Yeah. As I joked on my email to you, you're my first, which that double entendre that always gets me in trouble. But the goal of this, I want to do one of these every 1 or 2 weeks. And what kind of got me going with this is my progression into nursing school and advice that I've given people over the years about EMS. And as much as I love it, you kind of got to have a plan to get out of it, or to progress within it.
Yeah, it's definitely not a young man's sport.
It's like my knee. I spent the summer seeing Giovanni for my knee, which basically he and the PA both said, well, I know you're a paramedic, but try not to kneel down anymore. What? He goes, you've chronically inflamed your knee. And when you kneel down, your body weight magnifies by 7 times on your knee joint. And it's been fine for 3 months. I went golfing yesterday for 9 holes and I walked around the parks and my knee is throbbing today.
I bet.
So yeah, it's just, anyways. So what I want to do is give people some ideas and options about how some of us have gone on, whether it be laterally or upward like management, or more education. Like this afternoon, I'm talking to Bob Brown. So I mean, obviously I'm DO, so so that's kind of what but then I also want it informational. I mean, a lot of people, like in your case as a manager, a lot of people in EMS don't see the other side of the ER. We see, Jesus, we got to wait again, to offload our patient, or we got, this week we can replace this, that, So just a little bit. Some of my questions will be a little bit about that. And then a little bit about the Rona and how that's affected the ERs, and how that can then turn around and affect us. So I've got some notes, and that's just kind of the plan for the next, I don't know. I had said 20 to 30 minutes just because I hadn't done any, and I don't know how long. I mean, it'll run its course. If you get to a point time-wise and you need to go to a meeting or something, that, just let me know.
Yeah, no, should be fine.
Cool. So, the whole, like, where are you from? What, did you have an idea that you wanted to be a medic back in high school?
Yep. Yeah, wanted to be a medic in high school. Did my EMT my senior year of high school. Did it through a community course that was done through Huggins and Ospey Valley Mutual Aid, I guess you would say. The instructors were from Ospey Rescue, which has since disbanded. And I'm probably one of the only ones that I know of that still have my certification that was in that program. I did an independent study at Kingswood with health occupations to prepare myself for school. I was a big fan of emergency, which steered me this direction. And it also kind of steered me to the dispatch direction that I did on the side with emergency dispatching. My mother blames that show on my career choices.
Yeah, it's
which she's
funny.
fine with. Yeah.
It's funny how, emergency. I mean, today people binge watch emergency, and but it had a huge impact on not just a bunch of us, on the industry.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how what they were doing in the 70s, how long it takes it to get across the country.
Yeah, I mean, in the 70s it was based, Miami and LA County were the advisory kind of folks. And in the 70s here in New Hampshire, I mean, if you go to my favorite restaurant, Governor's Inn in Rochester, they've got old phone books from the 70s. And on the covers are advertisements for all these funeral home based ambulance services. It took a while.
Yeah. And I mean, just LA County running the first response vehicle with the medics. I mean, that's kind of where we were in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, absolutely. What I liked about emergency, as I've learned since, is that Jim Page, I think it was their advisor, and their requirement for the producers were everything we portray on this has to be realistic and it has to come out of a dispatch log someplace in the U.S. And that was unique. It wasn't just a make believe. This is what's possible. It's what was going on.
Right. It's hard to believe that was 50 years ago.
Oh, Jesus, dude.
They just celebrated 50 years this week that show debuted.
Yep. I got to see that truck in Roanoke, Virginia. I went to an EMS memorial service there, and they had the truck in the museum there. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I will see it someday. They only have one out of the three. They don't know where the other two are.
Right. Health Oc, that's cool to hear. Because I know at Kingswood they have health occupations. They did at Spalding, I think they still do, but I was in health occupations, and that's where I developed my interest. I had to do a project on a career, and I went to the old Benoits. I called Irving Benoit, asked permission to come in, and I spent, I don't know, an hour or two with this guy, Dave DeNike, who I ended up later working with, and learning about EMS. And that was kind of the start for me. I mean, of course, emergency in the background, 10 years earlier, 12 years earlier, but I like the health occupations program to give people that exposure.
Yeah, and that independent study program I did allowed me to shadow the ED here at Huggins. So my senior year, I shadowed here a couple days a week. And they had me shadow with respiratory therapy, so I'd catch airway stuff. And the respiratory therapist kept telling me, don't go the medic route, go the respiratory therapist route. You'll make more money. And I didn't listen.
No. Like my Army recruiter, I wanted to be a combat medical specialist. He goes, no. He goes, with your scores, do anything else in the medical field. He goes, you're already an EMT. I said, nah, only recruiter on the planet who didn't try to screw somebody, and I didn't listen to him.
Right, right.
Family wise, so Adam's a fire chief and an EMT. Is there anybody
Yep.
else in your family that did this?
So I was kind of the first one. My cousin Tim, he was probably the first one that became an EMT. He worked for Lords. He also was a part-time police officer. Ended up becoming a deputy sheriff. Let the EMT thing go. Worked his way all the way up the ranks to a sergeant. My cousin Tom, who later became an officer, a deputy sheriff, and then retired as a fire marshal, he did the EMT program with me. So we worked together both at Huggins and for Lords. And then my brother, he decided, he would follow us around. We did kind of the three of us and a couple of the other guys. One of the deputy fire chief at the time, Roland Libby, at Ospey Corner, kind of took us under his wing, and we were kind of an explorer program at Ospey Corner Fire, which at the time kind of met some resistance from some of the members, but other members it didn't. I did an explorer program with Wolfboro Rescue under Peter Hayes, and was on that department until I ended up going to the tech for my medic program. Yeah. So my cousin and I, we were kind of the first ones. I mean, his dad worked for the Navy. He was on the fire department, though. My dad was a car salesman. My mother's a school teacher. So before that, my grandfather was a mechanic. My other grandfather was a foreman for DOT. So we were kind of the first ones. My other uncle was also deputy fire chief in Center Ossipee. His son was a call member, but never was really involved. None of them really got into medical. Tom and I and Tim were kind of the first ones that got into the medical side of it. But it was kind of evolving then. I mean, early 80s, it was Ospey Rescue Squad. It was Lord Ambulance. It was really loose back then. I mean, there were contracts, but there weren't. And, it was early 80s. It was still relatively new. We got into it late 80s when it was kind of evolving, and that's when it became more like a permanent fixture in this area, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that I was the first in my family, and well, my parents, sisters, aunts, uncles, I'm it.
Yeah.
But obviously, then it rolled downhill like a freight train out of control.
Yeah, and it was pretty sparse here in Carroll County, because when I graduated and had my medic, other than a couple of the call medics up in Conway, there were no other medics in Carroll County. And the Independent did an article on me, and which ruffled some feathers at the time, but nothing intentional was meant by it. But there was probably only 4 or 5 of us in the county in 92, 93.
Yeah, well, I mean, 1988 when I graduated, the only medic services were Frisbee, Concord Fire, Rockingham and Nashua, and Derry.
Yeah.
Derry Fire. That was it. A couple of privates had a couple of those medics working part-time for transfers, and that was it. Shanahan's and Haverhill covered some of the towns that Trinity does now, the border towns.
Right.
But there were no other medics, and now there's one on every corner.
Right, exactly. I mean, there was myself, there was Dave Tauber in Conway, and I don't think there was probably anybody else for a while.
Yeah. What so your job now, we're going to kind of have you introduce that, and then we'll come kind of back around to it again. What is your job title now?
Director of Operations for the Emergency Department. So I oversee all the operations, the day-to-day for the ED and EMS.
So, the other ER directors, emergency room directors is a similar title in the other ERs. And it's funny because, I've always joked with you about the ENA firebombing your house or the ER. Um, so let's be clear. You are a paramedic. You are
Correct.
not an RN.
I am not an RN. I am a paramedic.
Right. So how, well, I know that you have, because I've worked for you, I know that you have clinical leaders that take care of the nursing
Yep.
side. How does that work for you guys?
So I have Stacy, she's a clinical nursing supervisor. So she'll take care of anything that comes up nursing wise that for some reason, if they feel I can't handle it, but that's never been an issue. And then Christine, she's our lead. So between the two of them, they share that charge lead nurse role as far as the ED goes for the day-to-day stuff. I do it as well. And then I'm responsible for budget, hiring, scheduling, all that, the operational aspects of the ED.
And as if that's not enough, you have to rotate through house supervisor as well during the day, correct?
That's been going on right now. Yeah, that's still current. That the directors each take a turn weekly at the supervision role, which that might be changing in the near future.
Yeah, I know from Helen that the scheduling for the supervisors and the numbers and who's doing it, and it changes damn near daily. So yeah, that's how did you come about getting this position?
Well, so 2012, I started here as a per diem medic after leaving my management position with Care Plus. I took a full-time position with the town of Wolfboro as an emergency dispatcher. Took the per diem role here to, keep my skills and my licensure and all that intact. After a few years, they transitioned some positions here, and the clinical lead came up. I applied for it. I was given it. So Stacy Flanagan and I were the two leads for the department. And then when the current director moved on, Stacy and I both thought we had a good thing going with the lead being in the lead position. We thought we had made pretty good strides with the department, and we wanted to keep moving forward. So we proposed that we would do try to do this position as her as the clinical nursing supervisor, me as the overall director, and the hospital gave us a shot at it. They had us interim for about 6 months, and then they made us permanent.
Nice. So what was there any kickback initially by anybody over this
None.
non-nurse? Cool.
None. None at
that's
all.
Amazing. Having come from ERs, back in '87 when I started Frisbee, even though they'd had medics in their ER doing full scope for 7 years, there was still a lot of kickback about medics just even working in the ER. And even today, there's so wide a variation of, the Huggins Memorial Frisbee medics who do everything. And, Portsmouth, where you're a tech, go start my IV. It's that's unique. And the ENA used to be very vocal in New Hampshire about getting rid of medics because we were going to cost them nursing jobs. So that is cool. Where am I here? So I got notes so I can keep. So going back to different classes that you've had and the different licensures. You intermediate?
Yep, I was one of the first classes that graduated the EMT basic program, which we were all disgruntled about because we all wanted the EMTA ambulance certification. And then I challenged the intermediate halfway through the medic program, as we were allowed to do. So
Yeah.
and it was important for me. I wanted to hold each level.
Hmm.
So yeah, I did the intermediate and then did the paramedic.
Is there something from each of those? Well, so from the EMT and medic school, is there something that you remember, whether it be like um, a lesson or a advice that you remember specifically that still you think about and it impacts you today?
Well, I was lucky, and one thing I think has gotten away from EMS is I was lucky. I was mentored both in school and I was mentored on the job, both at Huggins and with the ambulance services I worked with. And unfortunately, whether the time change or whatever, but it seems mentoring is a thing of the past. You know, the
Yeah.
EMTs fresh out of school, here's the keys, have a good time. Like, they might get a 1 or 2 days a ride, but that's it. And it's just basically put them in the seat and let them go. And it's too bad because I think it sets them up for failure. They don't get that. They don't get that mentorship from the person that's had those life experiences. Hey, yeah, I understand A and B, but down the road E and F may happen, and you might skip over C and D, but you got to be aware of E and F. And it's just it seems it's not there anymore. And that's one thing that I think I was fortunate to have, and I think that's helped me mature into understanding a lot of things that I understand now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Because I was thrown to the wolves as an
Yep.
EMT, and as an intermediate, I was the only one in the service. I was one of only like six in the city of Manchester total, thrown to the wolves.
Right.
And at Frisbee, although I'd worked there a year, my first shift as a medic, I had an EMT partner who, granted, Dick LeMay is the best EMT on the planet, and I learned more from
Hmm.
him than anyone. So he kind of mentored me, but I also had a
Right.
paramedic student, and so I just here. Um, but I could also come back to the ER because it was ER based, and the ER doc on duty would go, Kevin, you this one up. Let's talk about it. And so that was good. We're
Yeah.
trying to do that with action. We're trying to do a 12-week rotation. Like I'm the primary one of the for the 911 trucks with these new
Right.
medics. But 5, 6, 7 weeks down the road, and our schedule's screwed up, and we've got these
Yep.
openings, and the management
Yep.
wants, okay, we're on, and pull them. So
Yep.
it's, even though they support it, and I'm certainly not bad mouthing them because they do support it, but operationally things kind of sometimes,
It
unfortunately,
is. It's
take
tough.
precedence. Yeah.
Yeah, the workforce is limited right now, so it does. It makes it tough. And some of the people that are the 1 or 2 year either medics or EMTs or A's that are on the truck, they're only 1 or 2 years into it, so they don't have the life experiences either so they're still learning every day, and it just seems the depth isn't there anymore from the people that I got to experience from and got to learn through them and understand what they had seen and how to troubleshoot some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And these 1 or 2 year medics are, you know, 3, 4 calls in a 24-hour shift, um,
Right.
with no real oversight in a lot of cases. Who knows that what they're really learning is correct, and
Yeah,
then trying to put it on.
and it's not their fault. I mean, they're doing the
Yeah,
best they
oh,
can with what they have. So, I mean,
yeah.
and hopefully, their experiences they had with their ride time. I don't know if it's as stringent, as deep as it was when you and I did it. I'm not sure. My son's a medic. He works in Lowell to keep his skills where he'd like to keep them, his critical care thinking and all that. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine, and nothing against private. I mean, that's what I do now, but without the years of ER time, um,
mhm.
I can't imagine trying to stay proficient for the next 10 years if I don't go back to an ER at some point.
Right.
It's hard. And I tell my students, find somebody, not just that can mentor you, but in an ER, find somebody you can trust, that you can walk up to and say, hey, Trevor, I just had this call. What do you think?
Right.
Or, any of the nurses, and just find somebody you can run stuff by. And
Yeah, and it's
people,
cool. Like you and I do that. I mean, it's cool even bouncing it off like you and I do that, or we'll bounce it off Trevor. It's not a sign of weakness or anything. It's just like, hey, what do you think?
yeah, absolutely. Different eyes, different experiences. Yeah, certainly.
Right.
Um, so you touched on some of the services that you worked for. How
Hmm.
did you come about owning North Conway Ambulance?
I didn't own it. I just managed it.
Oh, I thought
Um,
I thought you were one of the owners.
no, no, I worked for the Kismans who owned it. I managed it for them. Between them and Care Plus, I was managing up there probably 10, 12 years. I worked for both services combined for a total of 18.
Hmm.
Um, and then when the Kismans decided to retire, I was part of the package to go with Care Plus. Care Plus wanted to keep me on in my role, and away we went.
So that had to have helped when you went, when you applied for this position at Huggins. You'd managed,
Yep.
you'd handled budgets, you'd done all that.
Yep. Yeah, I'd done contracts, HR. So I mean, small company, even North Conway, we were a small family-run company, so I wore many hats. I was the manager, day-to-day operations. The secretary and I did HR. We did payroll. We did billing. We did insurance. We did all, maintenance. All that stuff. I mean, you delegate some of it, but you had a clear understanding of what each other did, and that was important. And that was one of the things, that Tinker would strike home with us is it's not that I want one of you to be primarily it. You both need to understand what each other does in case you go on vacation, somebody gets hurt. The business has to run day to day, and it would have to if one of you weren't here. So it was a really good learning experience. Learned a lot from them, a lot of growth from them, a lot of understanding on how things go, and to really understand management from a little level to a bigger level.
Yeah, I think that's where, because at one point I wanted to move on and up to that sort of a position, but my supervisory experience with AMR was station supervisor, and there was none of
Right.
it was day-to-day running shifts, but everything else
Right.
got passed on, and so that was certainly an area that for me was weak, and I think kind of prevented moving on a little bit back when I wanted to. Now I'm just as happy to say now somebody else runs stuff. When I go home, I want to go home.
Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah.
Um, so what? So managing this service, because like
Hmm.
almost all EMTs and paramedics dream of starting and owning an ambulance service. Um,
Yep.
One of the medics I work with at Action is starting his own as like a part-time transfer system over in
Yep.
Concord where he lives. And I mean, at one point, a partner and I bought an ambulance, and we were going to do it. What
Yep.
what surprised you most about this process of running a service, and the difficulties with it? Would you think?
The Well, for me, the way it changes all the time, not necessarily, um, not necessarily medical wise. It's a continually changing business. It's a full time job, billing, insurance companies, and basically the games they play with you as far as your billing goes. And Um, one big thing was 9/11. 9/11 was a big deal, And I've mentioned that to people in the past. They're like, well, that was New York City. Well, why was that a big deal for you in North Conway? So 9/11 happened. We know all the responders, FDNY, and all the private companies, everybody that went to New York and helped, and then the towers collapsed, and the all the catastrophic events that happened with that. Well, the following year, we're up for our renewal for our coverage, our insurance, our liability insurance went up 110%.
Wow.
We never went to New York. We're how many hundreds of miles from New York? 110%. Tinker and I and Liz are sitting in the office like, what are we going to do? Don't want to lay anybody off. Do we sell a truck? How do we absorb this cost? So we were members of the New Hampshire Ambulance Association. The group got together. It worked out. We found a broker out of Arizona, Cindy Albert Insurance. She specialized in ambulance insurance. Kind of everybody in the state went into it all together, and we weathered the storm okay without layoffs, without selling stuff, without anything. But it's just that unpredictability. Insurance is changing all the time. Reimbursement is changing all the time. The cost of equipment, the cost of maintenance, it's really an unknown.
Mm.
And everybody, you have a contract, everybody else wants it. So you've got that, you're constantly looking over your shoulder.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought about the insurance side of it. I guess they had to recoup a ton of losses.
Yeah, and it's risky. I mean, people don't understand the overhead you have. Like, they'll see the trucks going. It's like, oh, you guys are making money hand over fist. Well, yeah, but you don't understand the downtime. You don't understand when the trucks aren't moving. We're still paying people. We're still paying insurance. We're still, you're still heating buildings. You're still paying benefits. You're still paying all this stuff. And it's just, it's unpredictable waters that can be kind of scary at times.
Yeah, and it's funny because the transfer world has always been where you make the money, and I'm actually hearing from some of these management folks that that's starting to kind of go backwards. Especially like with Action doing Memorial, they've got you do one call to main med, and it's 4 to 5 hours, and it's one call. It's not like in Boston where in 5 hours you can do 8 calls. So
I mean, your best runs would be like where the hospital is a mile from the nursing home. Do those runs all day long. You've got less to write off because it's a mile.
Yeah.
Less wear and tear. Your truck's in service. You're done. The long distance transfers, everybody's like, ooh, those are the winners. And it's like, not really. Not really. The truck's gone for 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, and then what do I do? Customers pissy because you don't have anybody available now.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're in that battle. So
it's
an interesting beast.
Oh, yeah. That's why I decided not to.
Yeah.
And I've seen it. You see it every day from the ER side of with Stewart's, which is your first contracted service, whatever, where they send a truck and it might be going to Dartmouth and you've got to wait. So it affects everybody. And staff gets cranky and they unfortunately sometimes take it out on the crew when they get back, who gets cranky and they go home and beat their wife. But kind of a vicious circle sometimes.
And it's tougher in the pandemic now because the closest facility might be Boston now. That might be the closest place that's got a bed now.
Yeah, we've been taking a bunch of people from Memorial all the way down into Hartford and New Haven.
Yep.
They had one.
Where there's a bed.
Yeah, Memorial Action rather, please. Action turned it down, and Berlin did it. It went to Buffalo.
Yep.
Yeah. One of the ER directors, or one of the ER docs rather, at Memorial, is the medical director for the ER main med, and they had somebody coming in from Kentucky. They had a direct admit transfer in from Kentucky, I don't know, a month ago. Just beds. Yeah. It's unbelievable. How?
It's an interesting state of affairs right now.
Yeah. So like every day, twice a day, Concord Hospital sends out a list of, if you're on their email thing, of patients that they're holding in the ER, they're bedding. And it can be anywhere from 1 to 30 at a time. How bad has it gotten for you guys?
Last couple of weeks haven't been too bad. A month ago, we were holding anywhere from 1 to up to 8 in the ED, which, I mean, we're a 14-bed ED, so yeah. Eight's kind of difficult.
Yeah.
But, we've had really good working relationship with Med-Surg, and we've been able to move patients along pretty well, and, you know, not as bad as it's been at some places.
So 14-bed ER and Med-Surg, and people think, well, I'll just move them upstairs. You guys are a critical access hospital. What does that mean?
It means limited beds. You know, we don't have all the specialties all the acute care hospitals have. So it limits us. You know, some of that stuff's out the window with the pandemic and everything. But, you know, and just because we're a hospital, we're suffering from, you know, we were suffering from staffing issues as well. So staffing on Med-Surg, staffing in the ER, you know, nursing shortages are everywhere.
What normally pre-Rona, what's the limit for in-house beds that you guys have? And this is, I mean, like government controlled, billing control, right?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it's up to 25.
Okay. And that includes Med-Surg, ICU, yeah. Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a you know, small hospital, and New Hampshire's full of those. You know, Memorial, Huggins, I can't remember. There's a couple up north. So they just don't have beds available, and their ICUs aren't what we think of as ICUs. You know, they can't handle the sicker people that like a Frisbee, Portsmouth, Dover could. All right. What if you, as a manager, what do you look for from somebody as far as like a resume goes? What do you want to see on that resume?
I like to look at their experience. I like to look that they're a team player, positive attitude, work ethic. Those are the big things for me. Communication is huge.
Okay. How would you want that relayed to you on a resume?
On the resume, not so much. I guess when I do the in-person interview, that's when I kind of reach in for that and try to see, you know, what they have to offer, how they answer questions about teamwork and difficult situations. You know, one of the questions we'll ask is, what's the most difficult thing you've ever dealt with, and how did you overcome it? What's your worst? You know, what's your worst experience? What's your best experience? Tell me how you work as a team. Tell me how you work with a provider. If you're nursing, how well do you work with EMS? If you're a paramedic or an EMT tech, how well do you work with nursing? We're all one here. It's not us against them. So those are the key things I look for.
Yeah, and that whole we're one at Huggins was part of what I loved there. At Exeter, as an example, they have 4 different like counter spaces. The docs sit at one, the Hucks and the charge nurse sit at one. The nurses sit at one, and the techs are at a completely different one. And it's very segregated. But, you know, in your ER, everybody's together. And that's part of what I loved about it. What about, oh, and the reason I asked about the resumes is, there are so many different ways to do them out there. I'm old school, resumes to me have always been just cut dry, experience. And I know that, there's different ways. So I didn't, that's kind of why I asked that question.
Yeah.
What is your take on, well, first off, why, I'm not going to try to hit you against, fire, private, hospital-based systems, but
Yeah.
what's the benefit to EMT, AMT, or medic? I mean, like Kyle came to me for his AMT and went, I want to be in an ER, which I thought that was pretty cool. What's the benefit to these providers working for a hospital system in the ER?
Well, you get to see in pre-hospital, you see A to B. You have anywhere from 15 to 30, 45 minutes with the patient. You do the best you can. You're kind of under the gun, and you treat that patient and you bring them in. And I think one of the benefits working in an ER is you may see A to B, like if we did an intercept or something like that, but then you get to see C to D, E to F. You get to do more assessments. You get to be involved in more of the treatment plan with the provider. I think it engages your critical thinking a little bit more. So when you are out in the field, you've had the experience of seeing, say it was a STEMI or a stroke, and you saw the first 10 minutes of it, then you see what happens afterwards, and it starts to make sense. Oh, that's why we're doing this now. This is why it's important for the IV to be here, why it needs to be an 18 gauge. And I just think you work on your assessment skills better. I think you get a clearer understanding of your medical patient.
I agree completely with that. Thank you. What about now? I mean, especially with COVID, benefits wise with the hospitals, are they still doing like educational assistance if you want, like, let's say, a medic in your ER wanted to go to nursing school? Is there still availability of that right now, or is all that kind of on hold? And what are you hearing from maybe some of the other directors?
No, they still have the program here for education. Had two on staff that still submit for their clinical, for nursing and everything. So Huggins is still very supportive of further education for their employees, and they still support it. Haven't taken it away. How it works at other places, I'm not sure.
Okay. Nursing programs, like we're in this unprecedented nursing shortage right now worldwide, and I'm trying to get into nursing school. There are no new schools out there. There are no new slots out there. It's almost like we're set up to fail. And
yeah.
A lot of these programs came from hospitals, went to the universities. I'm wondering when and if we might see, like EMT or ambulance services now are doing EMT programs and saying, hey, if you come work for us, you can have this class for free. I wonder if we're ever going to see that again with some of these hospitals.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what would be involved in like the accreditation process if they would have to partner with a school or a university, so that doesn't get as in depth. I'm not sure. I mean, I remember when hospitals used to do all back then it was CNA classes. You go to work for the hospital or the nursing home, they give you your CNA certification. And those have kind of gone by the wayside now.
Yeah, a lot of nursing homes are doing that though.
They are, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So I don't know if it'd be something you'd see. Maybe some of the bigger, the MGHs or some of the bigger places, maybe they will partner with certain schools or universities to try to increase the number of available nurses. It's a good question.
Yeah, we've seen it with medics where 2016 standards, I wanted to do a paramedic program. I couldn't. I didn't meet the new standards. You know, I have to have a
Right.
bachelor's degree. You have to have,
Right.
you know, X, Y, and Z affiliations with universities or colleges or hospitals. And we've seen a decrease in medic programs, and we've got a medic shortage too. So,
Yep.
hmm, hmm. um, COVID, COVID. So over the last 2 years, you and I joked and talked a lot about the stupidity we've seen with some of this COVID stuff. Um, and I thought of that immediately. Yesterday morning, I was on a bus going to Animal Kingdom, and the bus is empty. Guy came in, sat down right across from me with his wife, took his mask off and sneezed, put his mask back on.
Awesome.
I thought I was going to stab him right in the eye socket. Um, you know, Unbelievable. Anyways, so that made me think of you yesterday because, like I said, we've told a lot of these kind of stupid stories we've seen with all this. How has COVID changed your ER as far as like just budgeting?
Um, well, in the beginning, numbers were down. Everybody was scared to come to the ER because they all thought they were going to get COVID,
That was the best
which,
summer ever in an ER.
yeah, it just had a ripple effect because then people were showing up way sicker than they should have been.
Mhm.
Um, and then this past year been crazy for us. I mean, we've been seeing summer numbers into the first of the year, so budget wise, continued most of our summer staffing just to meet the demand. I mean, for us to use hall beds in November, December, and January was something that's always been unheard of.
Mm.
You know, seeing the volumes we've been seeing and the acuity we've been seeing, and like compounded by not just, it's one thing to have one critical in the department, but have two or three at the same time. Yeah, it's a little challenging.
And I would imagine, having that one nurse tied up for 2 hours in a COVID room has a
Right.
ripple effect on the rest of.
Yep.
What about like PPE? That first February when oh crap, we're short PPE. There was nothing budgeted to even think about
Yep.
that. I would assume that's got to eat up a good chunk of budget right now.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, right now our PPE's been really good. We've been fortunate. I think we were for the most part prepared. One of our big things that you would go through are gowns, and our linen company has these gowns that can be laundered. They're better than the disposable, and that was a huge cost savings right there. They provide us with them, they launder them, bring them back.
Nice.
Um, I mean, we got low on stuff once, but we never technically ran out of anything. And I think, stuff, the supply chain is right now for certain things. PPE, it's okay right now. So, you know, but the supply chain for other medical stuff it's interesting.
Yeah, well, saline flushes. Come on.
Oh, flushes, IV catheters, Foley's, bandaging material, just crutches. We were a month and a half waiting for crutches. We had
Everybody's
some, but
making everything else.
right. Yeah.
What about travelers? Now, normally, if I remember, having a traveler or two during the summer was kind of common. You
Yep.
guys still have travelers through the winter, and how many travelers you got right now?
I have 4 right now.
Wow. Now,
4
is that
travelers.
just because of volume or like people leaving? What would you say?
Open positions.
Not able to fill them. Hmm.
Yeah. Yep.
Have any of your folks left to go be travelers?
Um, One left to go to another facility, and since then has become a traveler.
Yeah.
So not directly from leaving us, but about a year later became a traveler.
Hmm. Yeah, that's one thing. The travel money out there right now is ridiculous.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Yeah. Hmm. All right. What? All right, we're almost done. Especially with the whole freaking Rona thing. I'm so done with Rona. Good Lord.
Yeah.
What? So, two last things for advice. A new graduate medic or nurse about coming to an ER, what would you give them for advice? Like, whether it be extra classes or just like planning, like, hey, this is how your life's going to change because it's an ER. What would
Yeah.
you tell them?
Be a sponge. Be a sponge and learn everything you can learn. I mean, if you can be mentored by somebody such as Doug, or, and just take the opportunity to sit, listen, and learn.
Yeah.
Don't come out with your guns a-blazing. Just kind of sit back and kind of take it all in and see how it works.
Yeah. That's good. Don't come out guns blazing. Yeah. And don't be,
And if you don't know something, say you don't know something.
right. And don't take offense at somebody telling you there's a better way to do it. Yeah. Be a sponge.
Right.
That's cool. What about,
learn what you can learn.
all right. So let's say your child or your grandson is finishing up an EMT class. What would you tell them for the future? Not like about the first 10 days, but like the future.
Oh, consider where you could go, what you could do. What experiences do you want to have? Where do you want to go with this? Is this 1, 2, 3 year thing? Are you thinking medic? Are you thinking DO? Are you thinking PA? Are you thinking private, fire-based, hospital-based? Where do you want to go with this? Or are you just, and support you and try to help you any way we can?
Mm-hmm. I think those were all my notes that I had. Is there anything else you can think of that you would like people to know? I mean, it could be about, hey, come work for me. It could be whatever.
Oh, I don't think so. I think, EMS, hospital, it's all, I mean, I learn something every day, and you got to be open to that. I'm very grateful for the opportunity I've had here.
Right. Well,
and for the other opportunities I've had in the force.
Yeah. I and like the 5 people who are going to watch this, thank you. I'm hoping to make this, a lot bigger. And again, just to help give back to other people, that younger me, that 25-year-old Kevin who thought, I want to be a PA, but I get kids, I don't want to lose time away. And maybe I should have,
right.
I mean, I'm certainly happy where I am. Absolutely happy where I am. But, so, and it's not just me, a bunch of different views and angles. And I appreciate the hour that you've spent with me. And
well, thanks for having me.
Certainly. Say hi to everybody for me. And
all right, Kevin.
Take care. Thanks.
Hope it warms up for you. Yeah. Take care, man.
I got to start my math class now.
There you go. All right,
All
Kevin.
right.
Take care.